are warm right now. You probably haven't thought about it once today. A number on a wall keeps your home at a fixed temperature, and you never have to fight for it. You have never had to. But for almost the whole of human history, that was not true. Winter was not weather. Winter was a test, and it came at people from every direction at once. Could you survive it? Start with the obvious problem. The human body was never built for cold. We evolved in the warm belt of Africa, thin-skinned, thin-furred, built for heat, not for holding it in. Drop a naked human into a Siberian winter, and hypothermia can set in within hours. Fingers go first, then thinking slows. Then the body simply gives up. By any reasonable measure, we are one of the worst equipped large mammals on Earth for surviving a hard freeze. And yet our ancestors didn't avoid the cold. They walked straight into it, out of Africa and into Ice Age Europe, into the Arctic, into places that should have killed them in a single bad night. So how? Fire was part of the answer, but only part. Fire has a flaw nobody likes to mention. It only warms the side of you facing it, and it doesn't move when you do. Step away to hunt or gather wood, and the warmth disappears with you standing there. What people actually needed was a way to carry heat on their bodies everywhere they went. That need produced one of the most underrated inventions in our history: clothing. Not a hide thrown over the shoulders. Something closer to what you'd call a coat. A draped skin leaves gaps at the arms, the sides, the neck. Wind finds every one of them. The real leap came when someone figured out how to cut hide into shaped pieces and stitch them into a garment that actually followed the lines of a human body. Sleeves, closed seams, a layer of warm air trapped against the skin and kept there while a person moved, hunted, worked. That single shift, from blanket to coat, changed what a human body could survive. But a coat needs a needle, and a needle with an eye is a harder thing to make than it sounds. Someone has to take a splinter of bone, grind it down to something thin and even, then bore a hole through it small enough to carry thread and strong enough not to snap under the strain. In 2016, researchers working in Siberia's Denisova Cave in the Altai Mountains found a bird bone needle roughly 50,000 years old, complete with its eye still intact. Mikhail Shunkov, who led the archaeological team, called it the oldest needle known anywhere in the world at the time. Whoever shaped that sliver of bone understood exactly what it was for. And the thread came from the same animals as the hide: sinew, the tough fiber connecting muscle to bone, dried and stripped into cord that held a seam together through years of wear. Put the needle and the sinew together, and you get something remarkable: a species that could manufacture its own portable warmth and carry it into places its body was never designed to survive. So you're dressed, you're insulated, but the sun is dropping, and clothing alone won't get you through the dark hours. You need shelter, and here's the detail most people miss. Good caves are rare. A dry, defensible cave in the right location wasn't something you could count on. And if you found one, there's a good chance someone else wanted it too. Most winters, if you needed a roof, you built one yourself, out of whatever the land actually offered. In central Ukraine, at a site called Mezhyrich, archaeologists led by Ivan Pidoplichko uncovered something that still seems almost unbelievable: circular dwellings built from hundreds of mammoth bones, dating back roughly 15,000 years. No forest nearby, no usable stone. So the people there built with what the landscape gave them in abundance: the skeletons of an animal most of us would call unbuildable. Jawbones stacked like tiles, tusks arched over doorways like beams. These weren't quick lean-tos. They were engineered, load-bearing structures meant to hold through a season that could kill everyone inside them if they failed. And the work didn't stop at the walls. What good is a shelter if the wind gets in through every gap between the bones? So people lined the floors. At a rock shelter called Border Cave in South Africa, a research team led by archaeologist Wadley found layers of grass bedding laid deliberately over ash, dating back tens of thousands of years, with the earliest examples pushing past 200,000. People were making their sleeping spaces livable before our species had even left the African continent. Think about what that means. Comfort, or something close to it, is not a modern invention. It's ancient. Outside the shelter, people packed animal hides against the inner walls, stacked blocks of sod against the outer ones, sometimes piled snow itself against the structure, because a thick layer of snow traps air, and trapped air holds heat. Layer by layer, the wind ran out of paths inside. A shelter stopped being four walls and became a system, engineered piece by piece to keep a small group of people alive through nights that had killed plenty of others before them. But a warm shelter creates its own problem. Keeping a fire burning through a whole winter takes constant fuel, and gathering fuel means going back out into the cold, again and again. You're tied to that shelter now, which means the food has to be close by, or it has to already be stored. And that brings you to the threat that likely killed more people than the cold itself. Hunger. Here's the part of winter modern life has erased almost completely. In winter, the world stops producing food. Plants die back. Roots freeze into ground too hard to dig. Animals migrate, hide, or grow lean and desperate right alongside you. For a hunting and gathering group, winter wasn't simply cold. It was the season when the land itself quit feeding you. That turned survival into arithmetic. You needed to gather enough in the warm months to carry everyone through months when almost nothing new arrived. So people became skilled at preservation, and they had a few genuinely clever methods. Drying meat thin, over low smoke or an open sun, pulled the moisture out, and with it, the rot. A rack of drying meat in the autumn functioned as insurance against starving in February. Cold itself became a tool too. Dig down into permafrost, pack it with fresh kill, and the ground becomes a freezer that needs no fuel and never fails. Winter, the very thing trying to starve a group, ended up preserving the food that kept them alive. But the single most valuable food in winter wasn't meat, it was fat. When your body is burning enormous energy simply to stay warm, lean protein isn't enough on its own. Fat is the densest fuel available, and people rendered it down into tallow, stable and storable, then mixed it with dried meat into a compact, calorie-dense food that could be carried and eaten through the leanest stretch of the year. In a season where every calorie mattered, fat was frequently the line between a group that reached spring and one that didn't. So now you're warm, you're sheltered, you've stored enough to eat. 3 of winter's weapons answered, but there's a fourth, and it doesn't attack the body at all. It attacks the mind. It's the darkness. The further north you go, the shorter the days get, and the longer the nights stretch, sometimes 15 or 16 hours of cold and dark, with almost nothing you can safely do outside it. No far travel, no real hunting, just a small group of people confined together, night after night, for months. That kind of enclosure can wear a person down in ways cold and hunger never do. Isn't that the part we forget first? But people didn't just endure those hours. They filled them. The dark became workshop time, repairing tools, shaping new spear points, mending clothing, twisting fiber into cord, carving, and it became something more than labor too. Around that fire in the dark, knowledge passed from the old to the young. Stories got told and told again, carrying memory and skill forward across generations. A significant share of what we now call culture, the songs, the myths, the shared knowledge that holds a group together, was shaped in exactly these conditions. People huddled against the dark, keeping each other warm and keeping each other sane until the light returned. Step back, and a pattern comes into focus. Winter didn't just get survived. Winter built us. The cold pushed people toward fitted clothing. The scarcity of caves pushed them toward real architecture. The seasonal gap in food pushed them toward preservation and storage. And the long, dark nights pushed forward the beginnings of culture itself. Nearly every technology that eventually let our species spread into every climate on the planet was forged in the effort to get through a single hard season. So here's the fuller picture. Winter came at your ancestors with 4 threats. The cold answered with fire and sewn clothing. The night answered with shelter built from whatever the land provided. Even the bones of a mammoth. The hunger answered with drying, freezing, and rendering food into something that could last for months. And the darkness answered by turning the longest nights into the place where human knowledge and connection were built and passed on. None of it was guaranteed. Every winter was a test that plenty of people did not pass, and survival was earned through preparation, skill, and stubbornness, season after season, for longer than we can easily picture. And now look at where that leaves you. You turn a dial and the room warms. You open a door to food that grew on the other side of the planet in the middle of December. You've never once had to look at the first snowfall and wonder whether you stored enough to make it to spring. You don't survive winter anymore. Winter didn't get weaker. You are simply standing on top of 100,000 years of people who froze, who went hungry, who sat together in the dark, and who slowly figured out how to beat it, one invention at a time, so you never would have to.